right. Well, welcome everyone to Backstage. My name is Elise Bryson. I am one of your hosts and the founder of the Sober Curator. I've got my sidekick Tamara Routley running the Zoom for me. She is also the co-host of the Sober Curator podcast, as well as the producer and editor of the podcast. She is basically the reason we have a podcast. Tamara, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Elise. It's always good to be here.
Well, and for those of you that aren't aware, Tamara is located in the Great North, Canada, Vancouver, Canada, to be exact, which means she is definitely the nicer of the two of us.
I second that.
Well, yes. Well, welcome to June, everyone. This is our first event. No, second event. Was last week's June or not? I don't know. Last week was June. Last week we had conspiracy PowerPoint theories party. Ted, you really missed that one. It was people came and they presented their favorite conspiracy theory via PowerPoint for approximately 10 minutes. And what we learned is that maybe the Titanic wasn't the boat we thought it was, that birds are not real, and Sasquatch very much is real. It was quite a show, quite a show. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce all of you to my East Coast friend, Ted Mandell. He is a professor at Notre Dame, and I met him 2 years ago ish because I learned about the class and then I eagerly hunted him down. And much to my surprise, he responded to my random cold email, which was very nice. And he's going to tell you all about what he does there. But I am very excited because, as you all know, entertainment, movies, documentaries, and film, well, that's all the same thing, and TV shows are a huge part of the sober curator community. It's a big traffic driver for us. I love that we get to, for our jobs, watch movies and television shows and then write about what we thought about how addiction was or was not portrayed, and then of course the evolution of how that's been showing up on the silver screen over the last handful of decades. So without further ado, Ted, turning it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Elise. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited. And I love reading The Sober Curator every week. So I get it on my email or a couple times a week. And I learn a lot from you. By the way, thank you. All right, so I'm going to share a PowerPoint and I'm going to give you kind of a background of why I teach the class and the class that I teach. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the class, actually. I'm going to do a little analysis of kind of what we do in class. So hopefully I can get this to work. Um, Let me know if I have a problem. I'm gonna jump into the mode that's supposed to go. Okay, everybody can see that? I can't see you, but hopefully you can see that. Um, This is Drunk on Film, and the long title of the course is Drunk on Film: The Psychology of Storytelling with Alcohol and Its Effect on Alcohol Consumption. I started the class in 2020, and I co-teach the class with a psychology professor. It was Henri Venter for the first 6 years, then he just retired, and now I teach it with Andrea Christensen. The concept behind the course, and I can just tell you the genesis of the course was I have three children. They were in their late teens, early 20s, and headed out to college. And I have addiction in my family. And I saw them entering college, and I was really frustrated about what I think is a kind of a dangerous drinking culture across college campuses in America. And it's like, what can I do? Well, I teach film production. I've studied film for my entire life since I went to graduate school at the University of Iowa. And I started looking at the portrayal of alcohol, the narrative of alcohol in the media that we consume from the day we were watching DVDs in our minivans to junior high school to high school, and trying to figure out why is it that these students, when get to college, suddenly turn into these incredible binge drinkers, and why is that such a positive atmosphere? Well, probably because everything they've seen before that is encouraging them to do that. So I created this course, and the course I've taught over 2,000 students. It is one of the more popular courses on campus. We have about 178 this past semester with a wait list. Um, and it actually got some attention nationally. So what you're looking at right now is a still from the PBS NewsHour, which ran a piece on drunk on film. I'm not going to show it today. It's about 7 minutes, but you can Google it if you just Google PBS NewsHour and drunk on film, and you can watch the kind of overview they came into the class, and it talks about what we do. But I'm going to talk about what we do right now. So at the end of the drunk on film piece on the PBS NewsHour, they threw up this particular statistic. Around 15% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 meet the criteria for alcohol use disorder. And that's just that statistic kind of flies by. And we actually talk about the importance of statistics versus stories and how people are influenced far more by stories that they see on film or hear rather they are than any flat statistics. So we can run statistics by our students all day long about the dangers of alcohol, and it doesn't make any dent in their behavior. However, when they start to see stories on the screen, both fiction and nonfiction, and we start to point them out, it does have an effect on them. So if you were to take that statistic, by the way, and take it to the University of Notre Dame, we have 8,923 undergraduate students. If you said 15% of them actually meet the criteria for alcohol use disorder, that's 1,338 students. That should wake somebody up. And we have a rather small undergraduate enrollment when compared to larger schools around the country. So imagine a Texas or an Ohio State or one of the bigger schools where they have 40,000 or even more undergraduates. Imagine the number of students that would meet that criteria. And the question is why? Why is that? Because if you were to go to a college campus, most of the students would say, no, what we do is normal. Our drinking is normal. And we find that that's the one first thing that in the class is they're like, what? 5 drinks in a pregame is binge drinking? Are you kidding me? That's normal. That's what we do. So that's what I kind of got into the class. So at the start of the semester, I actually have my students document what they drink during what's called Silly Week, which is called Silly Week is refers to the syllabus. It's the first week of classes where and this may be at other universities as well, but the idea is that there's this first week of classes where students are not really taking tests or have homework, so they go out and drink a lot. So this is one particular student. I'll just give an example. Without lying, I drank on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 6 days in a row, a minimum of 5 shots and 3 drinks approximately each day. Monday was kind of chill for me. I was happy to see my friends, but didn't want to get blackout drunk since I had 5 more days left in the week. On Tuesday, I was not hungover, so I went to a party during the afternoon. I was drunk, but not that drunk. On Wednesday, I decided to go to a rooftop party and then to an after party. That day, I drank about 4 drinks and an uncountable number of shots. I didn't get drunk. Thursday was my worst day. I drank 5 beers and then went to a party afterward. I kept drinking shots and drinks, and unfortunately, I blacked out. The next day, anxiety hit me. People asked me about things I didn't remember. I kept asking myself, why did I do that? On Friday, I went to a party. I drank about 3 shots and half a pitcher. On Saturday, I went to another party during the day and drank about 5 drinks. Now that I analyze it, it's questionable why I decided to drink 6 days a week. I don't feel good about it now. I don't know what people think. My friends all drink as much or more than I do, so I don't think they have a negative opinion of me. I think that's a it's a nice snapshot. Obviously, there are students who drink, more or less, but the idea, I think, in the tone that you get here is the concept of normalization of binge drinking on college campuses, how they're not really worried about the effect of alcohol long term on them when they're in this kind of bubble of 4 years. So we'll take a poll, and one of the surveys at the beginning is tell us the first time you became drunk. So here's an example from last spring. 73% of these students became drunk before they even came to college. Before they even got to college, they were drunk. So it's not like they're just getting to college and starting to become drink. There's something that's going on before that part of their lives. On a typical Friday night when they're in college, my college friends usually drink on average. If you take 4 to 5 and plus 5, you're up to 83, almost 83% of this particular class are telling us that they essentially are binge drinking on a typical Friday night. It varies between 75 and 80% percent every semester. Why? Why is that considered normal? So what we do in the class is we start to break down the narrative of alcohol. First of all, we'll look at feature films where that kind of glorify binge drinking, teen rom-coms, and even things like Trainwreck. And we'll actually the narratives in the films will progress. So the protagonist at the beginning of the semester might be in high school. The protagonist at the end of the semester will be an older adult, where we see the effect of alcohol over the period of their lives, as opposed to like how it's portrayed in a teen rom-com. We'll also look at nonfiction sources, documentaries that talk not just about alcohol, but the effects of the media and consumption and social media, sexual assault on college campuses as a result of alcohol consumption. And we'll also look at a lot of TED Talks. And these TED Talks go from everything from Johann Hari, which talks about connection is the opposite of addiction, Brene Brown and vulnerability, and also guys like Andrew Stanton, who talks about the construction of stories. Storytelling is a very important part of this class, and we have our students tell their stories. So you saw at the beginning, what I just showed you was a student at the very beginning of the semester telling her story about alcohol in a very kind of casual way, not really worried about it. And you can tell the tone of it. And then at the end of the semester, they have to write their own personal story of alcohol. And by telling your story, it helps change your attitude towards your own behavior. Storytelling is also big on campus because it's part of that debrief. The debrief on college campuses is huge. The idea that you go out Friday, Saturday night, you wake up, you go to the dining hall, and you sit around with your friends and you tell stories about what happened the night, your drunken stories about what happened the night before. And typically those drunken stories are comedic, or they're shaped to be comedic, even though they may be somebody blacking out or getting their stomach pumped or doing really crazy things. That becomes entertainment for their friends. And that's what drunkenness and intoxication has been shown in films all along. It's comedic many times. As you're growing up, even if you looked at Looney Tunes cartoons back in the day, drunkenness is funny. E.T. gets drunk and it's funny. And kids, when you're growing up, you're taught that it's just a funny thing that adults do. And it's funny and there's no consequences to it. So I'm going to give you right now a 7-minute clip from a teen film called The Kissing Booth. I'm sorry if you actually have seen this film. Um, it was it was one of the most watched films on Netflix in 2018. It has spawned two sequels to it. It was Jacob Elordi's kind of coming out film. It also stars Joey King. But the narrative essentially is Joey King is a junior in high school, and she's going to her first high school party. And I'm going to show you this scene. It's 7 minutes long, and then I'm going to break down how we analyze this and look at the elements of the scene that students probably aren't paying any attention to. And in fact, I would say half of my students have already seen this film, and a good portion of them, after they watch the film and had been taught to kind of look at it through a different lens, will come back and say, I didn't even remember them drinking alcohol at all in this film. Subconsciously, it just went right past them. But the normalization and the attitude towards alcohol clearly didn't. So here we go. I'll show the scene and then we'll talk about it. All right, I'll stop there. I'll stop the pain there. Okay, so before I go through this, I want you to understand that the target audience for that particular film has got to be in the 13 to 14-year-old teenage girl range, right? This film, again, I said two sequels to it, and I want to walk you through what I would analyze, what we talk about in class for students about what you just watched. Okay, so first of all, here are 10 rom-com themes that we see in teenage films, and the idea that these kind of messages, if you're watching these films when you're in junior high or high school, do they actually lead to a belief system that is false as you get older in real life. Number one, this idea of the sober female outsider, a girl who is sober and she's the good girl, and to actually become part of the group, she has to drink. So she goes in, she says, oh no, I don't drink. And then of course they give her the drinks and now she's part of the group. So to be part of the community and to be part of the group, you drink. And you don't just drink, you binge drink. And binge drinking is normalized here. You don't drink just to drink in these films, you drink to get drunk. So the quantity of alcohol is never even questioned, right? And because it's never questioned, when you make films like this, time compression is a big part of it. So when Elle Evans takes her drinks and they start drinking, you notice they kick in that piece of music, which is Safety Dance by the 80s song. Um, at the same time, this in about a 15-second sequence, it's basically a music video of her getting trashed and drunk, right? You have no concept of how much alcohol she's consumed over how much period of a time. And that's what filmmaking is. Filmmaking is not about time, it's about storytelling and moving the narrative along. So the idea is to just show her getting drunk. But for a young, impressionable audience, they have no concept of what that amount of alcohol, which was probably, I don't know what the percentage was, she's doing shots after shot after shot, how that affects her body. In reality, if Elle Evans had never drank before and drank that much alcohol, she'd have been in a hospital or in an ambulance prior to even getting up on that table, right? And so they turn it into a kind of a fun music video, and it's seen as fun rather than problematic. Number four, this idea of the red cup being a signifier of belonging. If you look in the back of all these scenes, you'll notice that everybody has a red cup in their hand. And the idea, if you're holding a red cup, that means you belong with the group. And in fact, in college, students will say, some students will say, I'll just put water in anything to belong, because visually that's what's the signifier of being part of the group. Everybody drinks at these parties. Like in the kissing booth, everybody's drinking, but only one person is drunk. It's the protagonist. If you'll notice, everybody else around them has been drinking, but they all act sober. And there's no high school on a party on the planet where this is true, right? So it makes it feel like it's the fault of the character themselves, and it's never about the alcohol. It's always the fault of the character. Drunkenness, typically in films, and not just teen rom-coms or whatever, is shown as a character flaw. It's something it's a moral failure. It's never questioned whether or not the alcohol itself is the problem or the addiction is the problem. The question is always like, well, this person is just misbehaving. They have bad moral character. If they would just do this and turn their life around, and it never really addresses the actual science behind alcohol addiction. Okay, so and then number six, the idea that alcohol is always connected to romance and sex. Elle Evans doesn't get to meet her dream crush, Noah Flynn, Jacob Elordi, unless she's blacked out and ends up in his bed the next morning, which beyond belief is a problematic situation, right? So you're telling high school students or junior high students that, oh, if you get blacked out, somebody will come save you. I'll hit that in a second, right? And it always leads to some kind of romantic or sexual situation. In that case, obviously, nothing kind of happens, but that is the impetus for their relationship for the rest of the film. She doesn't get him unless she actually, blacks out in that party. The objectification of the female body and the male gaze. So when she gets drunk, she starts taking her clothes off, and instead of us seeing the images of the scene from her perspective, we see these men gazing up at her body. Her body is fragmented, and it's a classic objectification of the female body, which you saw in advertisement after advertisement after advertisement for the alcohol industry in the early 2000s, and all the way up to kind of the Me Too movement, basically. You have this idea of the sober white knight. I call it the sober white knight. It's always this hyper masculine male who at these parties doesn't drink and becomes this kind of savior guy who walks in the party, saves the drunken girl, and keeps her quote unsafe. It is the most unrealistic depiction of a high school party that could ever be, but yet it's never portrayed as problematic. Noah Flynn has a big anger issue throughout most of this film. He's not the character who's going to be sober at a high school party, but yet he's portrayed as that character. Um, Consequences never match drinking behaviors. So she wakes up the next morning and it's like, oh, I got a hangover. Oh, I'm fine now. Okay. Right. I mean, in reality, she would have been very sick, not have been able to get over the hangover like that. And in most cases, hangovers in films last maybe 5 seconds, right? And then they're gone. So the consequences of drinking and how much you drink never match the drinking behavior. They're just kind of blown off. Next day, the effect of the alcohol never carries on. And then lastly, this concept that is really interesting that I this the idea that drunk words equal sober thoughts. A lot of students we have these conversations. Do you think that drunk words equal sober thoughts? In films, drunk words do equal sober thoughts. Drunk words in films many times you'll see, especially in these teen rom-coms, and this particular scene I didn't show you the end of that, but in a lot of scenes, what will happen is at the end of the night, the two characters will magically sober up and share their inner thoughts. Or if they're together, they'll be drinking, and by drinking and having alcohol, all of a sudden they become vulnerable and say some vulnerable things that reveal what their inner thoughts are. And as an audience, you believe that because in film, characters do not lie. They're not going to lie. They're going to tell you how they really feel. And that's how we know who they are as a character. But in reality, that never usually happens. Especially on a college campus, the people are drunk and they may say crazy things that night or do crazy things, and the next morning, the next day, or the next week, they never see that person again. So these are some of the themes that are perpetuated in show after show after show, especially, and I'm kind of focusing right now on the shows and films that are targeted at a younger demographic. But that builds these belief systems as you go into college and specifically for women of what it is to drink alcohol and what it is to be part of those kind of parties. But what if, and I'm going to show you, what if we didn't have films like that? What if we had a film that actually questioned the culture? So I used a little AI and I did a little 90-second remake of The Kissing Booth. And to show you what I think would be really interesting to test an audience with. I don't think Netflix would do this, but here we go. So that's my remake of The Kissing Booth, of how I think that it should be presented. At the end of the semester, we take a poll and we find that 90% of our students change the way they think about how alcohol affects them and others. And I think the other 10% were non-drinkers to start with. So I feel pretty confident that we're reaching everybody. A couple quotes. This class truly has changed the way I look at alcohol, my relationships, and myself. I feel emotional writing this because of this class has changed my life so much over the course of the semester and will certainly impact the rest of my life for the better. I think that this should be a required class for all students at all universities. Hopefully, this class can be taught at other schools so that more eyes can be open like mine were. We also did a poll of former students who are still at Notre Dame. Students have taken the class but were still enrolled. We found that 52% of them who drank more than 5 drinks on a night out before the class had reduced their drinking and now do not drink. They listed it typically as 1 to 3 drinks when they go out. And amongst women, it dropped by 74%. So we were really excited. I'm really excited about that. Um, and, you know, ideally, it would be great if they all stopped drinking, but that's just not a reality in the environment that they actually are in right now. So what we found is that most students will, if they do change their behavior, they will reduce the amount of drinks that they have rather than becoming completely sober. So that's my story. I guess I unshare. Is that how I did that? Stop sharing.
Yeah.
That's my story.
Ah,
Some of the things that we do.
that was so good. That was so good. And that you kind of ended with the question I wanted to ask first was because I'm thinking about what would young Elise do if she was at school, hadn't dropped out. If I had seen that class, being the alcoholic rager that I was at the age of 18 or 19, because I was full in it at that point, I would have taken this class out of to be funny, to be like, because I wouldn't have taken it serious, but I would like to think that throughout the course I would have gotten confronted with some reality. So do you like, can you see that in your students? Can you
Absolutely.
clock who those ones are?
That's a narrative that I've heard very many times, especially like we'll start this semester with I don't know if you've seen the documentary Risky Drinking, the HBO documentary Risky Drinking.
Mhm.
We start, I don't know if you remember Kenzie right there. Kenzie's the first character in that film, and she's a 20 something. But it's a documentary, and she just goes out and gets plastered, right? And I can't tell you how many of the reflections where some women will say, I saw myself up on the screen. I saw myself up on the screen and I didn't like what I saw. And I think that's it can be the effect of filmmaking. And in the second half of the semester, we do a lot of things about the effects of not just the person drinking, but the effect on other people, family members, spouses, right? And how alcohol affects other people. And when they start to see that as well, like what's the effect on your husband or wife or your kids, right? It really starts to build. It builds and builds and builds. By the end of the semester, like this, I don't even know why I even thought that this was a good idea to drink like that, right? Um, and I think the other thing is by telling their own story, you would not believe. I mean, we've read a lot of stories, and in this space, you guys are probably pretty aware. But in most spaces, people aren't aware of the generational alcoholism that occurs and how many students are coming from families where alcohol occurs, or families where they didn't even think of it as alcohol, and now they look at it and alcoholism or alcohol use disorder, and now they look at it and go, "Wow, I grew up in that environment," or that that's a problem. So when you show TED Talks and you show non-fictional pieces, which call it what it really is. Um, it really, it scares some students, and it definitely changes their outlook like beyond college. Because we tell them, like, look, it's May, you graduated on May 18th. You drink like you drank on May 17th, on May 19th. It's not funny anymore. You're out in the real world, that's not funny. That's not comedic. That's not debriefing story. That's a problem. I mean, I always tell them like if you're going to go tailgate and pregame with a whole bunch of people and you drink 5 shots, what is that? Is that any different than going home to your dorm room on a Wednesday night by yourself and drinking 5 shots? And they'll always say, well, yeah, if I drink by myself, I have 5 shots, that's a problem. But if I drink with my friends with 5 shots, that's not a problem. I mean, oh, really? It's the same effect on your body, right? But in these films, they're taught that drinking in crowds, and obviously, you guys are aware that in alcohol ads, it's all about community. It's all about people need people, and that alcohol brings you together. But in fact, there's no difference. Your brain doesn't, differentiate between five shots here and 5 shots there.
And one of the things that I just wanted to add to that, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Is that I've always found, and like the clip you showed, they glorify drinking so much. It's
Mhm.
like it's the big mansion with the nice, you see that in ads too now, where it's like, wow, that looks so fun. But the reality is when you hit that certain point, that it's not fun anymore. And I love the AI version that you did because it is really what people would be saying if they would be honest. I mean, it's insane, but I just have always found it just crazy how in the movies they just glorify it and glamorize it so it's so appealing, especially I could imagine to young people like, yeah, I want to go to a mansion and have a party.
Right. Do you remember what the first image was of that party scene that I showed you?
The outside on the beach, wasn't it?
It was the outside. What specifically was the image? It was a shot that
Wasn't it
started.
a couple making out?
Yes, yes, making out on the
Yeah.
lawn with alcohol right next to them, right? You'd
Yeah.
be surprised if you look at how many a lot of teen films, every part, a lot of not every, but a lot of party scenes will start exactly that way, with a couple making out, and then the camera will crane into the actual party itself. Or when you get into the party, you'll see couples making out behind them. And again, the message is you go to parties, you hook up. with alcohol. That's the message over and over and over again.
Ted, thank you so much for this. This is like, I mean, this is just really incredible and such a gift you're giving to these young people. I worked with high school students for a number of years as a youth minister, and a lot of what I did was listen to stories of regret from high school students. And even just like talking about this and watching this, and like I had like a full body reaction to seeing the red Solo cup. I'm like, gross. Um, yeah, I find the music selection in the party scene like so um like I'm so curious about that because even just watching that, right? Like I'm sober 7 years, I'm removed from alcohol and everything. And even watching that, like it was bringing me back to a sense of nostalgia. I mean, that's a song that I grew up with, right? And so I wonder if that, like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a very deliberate choice to soften the adults, right? To soften the parents who say, well, yeah, this is just what we did, right? This is just how it was. And like, I wonder if that's ever a part of your discussions as well as like what the parental experience was for this generation of kids.
100%. I mean, 100%. That's exactly a question I asked them. I asked them, why am I listening to 80s music, Safety Dance?
Hmm.
Why am I listening to Bust a Move here? And they'll go, I don't know. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, how old are your parents? How old are the kids in this film? How old are their parents? Right? And they'll say,
Mhm.
oh, that's the music that their parents listened to, right? The mother of Noah Flynn in the film is Molly Ringwald. She plays
Wow.
they actually
Wow.
they actually play the song "Don't You Forget About Me" towards the end of the film. There's a lot of nostalgia and it's obviously carefully crafted to attract the parents of the target audience. So
Mm.
they'll say, "Oh, wow, I remember that," right? And then again, soften it. I think you said it exactly. You said it better than Can you teach my class next week?
Yeah.
You said it better than I do, but that's another point of that particular piece of music. Music is so powerful, and but in some ways you think it's misplaced, but it's all intentional. It's
It
all
is like, I mean, that's, I think that for me, like, I think that's the biggest, other than like it's all a gift, right? But I think like the manipulation of big alcohol and like really having your eyes open to that in a conversation when you are in college, when you're 19, 20, 21, especially for women, because I mean, what I confront now, I'm a recovery coach and I coach women in their 40s and 50s, right? And what we're confronting now is how very specifically alcohol is marketed to moms,
Mhm.
not just women, right? Because that was, I think you said it, that was more like, mid 2000s and stuff like that. But now it's like mommy wine culture is like out of control,
Mhm.
and I just think of like, gosh, what would have been different for me and for my friends and for this whole generation of, women in their 40s and 50s now if this information and this perspective was available to us to see that it is very intentional and very manipulative.
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point, and that's a section of our class where we showed Trainwreck with Amy
Hmm.
Schumer, and we talk about there's an article about the I think it was called Bandit wine boxes or something like that. There's this huge jump. She drinks these wine boxes.
Yeah.
There was a huge jump in the sales of that particular brand of wine, which is marketed specifically at women. Yeah, we talk a lot about the wine culture that you're talking about, and we also talk about what different types of alcohol mean. Like why do students drink? Why do female students drink seltzers and guys drink beer? Why do women drink wine? What does it mean when a character drinks a certain type of alcohol? And what's that associated with, and how does that associate their character? And what is your belief system? Like, why are you drinking that brand of whatever you're drinking? And
Mm.
just to kind of show them how easily they're manipulated and have been manipulated.
Mhm. I'm curious, I read a lot of headlines, and the constant headline we're seeing is that Gen Z is drinking less than millennials and Gen X and boomers. You're on the front line. Is it true?
Not in my experience. Not my,
Uh-huh.
it's not in my experience. I don't know where that statistic's coming from. And even I think I did see one. I think that the difference in percentage might have been 2% or 3 percentage. It's absurd, right? This to me is not necessarily about, oh, there's fewer Gen Zs drinking. It's about the amount that they're drinking, which is astounding. I mean, it blew me away when I first was reading some stories. I mean, that particular one that I showed you at the beginning, that's just normal. And they don't even question it. And they're not drinking beers. They're drinking Borgs. Do you guys know what a Borg is? Oh, okay. I'll try. So a Borg is a trend it's in high school and college and TikTok, if you look it up. All right, where students will take a gallon of water, right? This plastic water gallons. They'll pour out half the water. They'll put an entire fifth of vodka in it with Mio and electrolytes and shake it up. And so it's a color, and then put a kind of funny name, a kind of a punny name with Borg, like Le LeBorg James, or basically they name their Borgs, and then they go to parties. And it's pitched on TikTok as quote unquote a safer way to drink because the women now have their own jug of alcohol instead of going and somebody giving them and could have roofied them, right? That's the yeah, it's absurd. I said it's a safer way to drink to walk around with a fifth of vodka all day. I said, what would be the difference between me walking in with your Borg that's nice and green and has a funny name on it, and me walking in with a brown paper bag with a fifth of vodka in it? Is there any difference? What would you think? And they would say, well, we think you'd have a problem if you had a fifth of vodka within a brown paper bag, but they wouldn't if you had a Borg, right? It's the same thing. It's the same amount of alcohol. So they will justify just about anything as a trend. Um, and it's the culture. I mean, social media has a lot to do with it too. There's a lot of drinking trends that show up on social media. There's, as you guys know, like seltzer reviews. There's splitting the G. Have you heard that phrase? The Guinness splitting the G. The idea of taking, like, when you get a glass of Guinness, the Guinness glass has the word Guinness on it. It's about, I don't know, a little bit more than a halfway through, maybe three-quarters of the way, and you're supposed to take the first gulp and drink it and drink it and drink it and drink it and drink it. So
Yeah.
the
Okay.
top line, the top until the top line of the beer is right in the middle of the G in Guinness. And basically you're trying to chug half the drink, and it's a game. I mean, in many ways, drinking in college is a game. It's a sport. It's a competition, and you see it over and over and over again in these films, where beer pong there's very few parties in teen rom-coms that don't have the beer cups all lined up on the table and the kids with ping pong balls putting. I mean, that's a normalization, another kind of red cup normalization.
I that is so fascinating. Like I think about I could have gotten help with my alcoholism much sooner had I not had that perspective that you have to drink vodka out of a brown paper bag and be homeless to be that, labeled as, say, an alcoholic or some substance use disorder. So for you to say that and how these kids, it's so easy to justify like that. It doesn't look the same, so it's different. It's like, no, same amount of alcohol. And how many kids don't get help because they continue to justify?
hmm Yeah, I mean, I think one of the benefits of the class by the end of the semester, because of the tone of the films changes. We show the way back. We show When a Man Loves a Woman. We show the film Krisha, which I recommend to anybody who's interested in this space, Krisha. We show Flight, you know, but films where addiction is a really part of it, and then understanding that there's a story behind it. Because I think it's really unfair to a lot of college students that they get blamed for being drunk, or they get in trouble with the student affairs people because they blacked out or passed out. They've got a story behind them, and it's usually they're drinking because there's a problem that they're trying to deal with, whether it's a family problem or something else. It's not a moral failure, but that's what we're taught. We're taught it's a moral failure. There's also a whole element of social psychology that's part of this class, and that your behavior is many ways shaped by the environment that you're in. So we'll talk a lot about, like, a lot of students will say, I drink completely differently when I go home over the summer versus when I'm here. And especially some students, we've had students who were in recovery who left the university and then came back, but ended up being in the same environment that they were in before. They were put right back in the same fishbowl and then expected to somehow change their behavior and not relapse in some ways, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's like making somebody who's got a problem be the bartender. Um, it doesn't work that way. And yet that's the way that they believe it does, because again, in films, when characters have problems drinking, it's their fault because everybody else is sober in the scene. It's their fault. It's Elle Evans' fault. Everybody else is being a responsible high school student, which is crazy, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I have a
In
question. Oh.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I know you teach at one particular school, but I just wonder if you've heard any statistics or conversations about university, like the university I went to was, super Christian. We had to sign lifestyle expectation agreements and things like that. So had we been found drinking, we would have, been kicked out of school. So people did it underground and probably, potentially either, more dangerously or, the second we graduated, like myself, I just like all hell broke loose. Have you heard any statistics or conversation about how that type of environment where it's like so the opposite can also be, really detrimental?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, prohibition doesn't work really well, especially, and again, when you're in an environment where everybody else around you, no matter what the rules are in your space, when you turn on your phone and social media and you're on Barstool Sports and Almost Fridays and Friday Beers and every piece of entertainment of drunken comedy is flowing through your algorithm, right? And then, your friends are texting you funny videos and showing you, moments when they're drunkenness. I don't care what the rules are around you. You're going to be, curious as to what that's like. I don't know of any statistics. I can give you a case example. Across the street from Notre Dame is Holy Cross, College. Holy Cross College is a dry campus, supposedly. You're not even allowed to have any alcohol paraphernalia in your rooms, right?
Yeah.
Notre Dame is right across the street, and it's not. My son actually went to Holy Cross his freshman year and then was able to transfer into Notre Dame sophomore year. I don't know. I didn't notice. I mean, I thought it was great. Oh, wow, he's on a dry campus, but I was like, there's no way that's gonna change behavior. And I've heard a lot of stories of students who transferred in their freshman year at Holy Cross, and it really wasn't much different. I mean, obviously it's a choice to
Hmm.
do that, and we do have really great. There is a presence. Like I said, it's about 8 to 10% of the students who take the class are non-drinkers, and they tell stories of non-drinkers. They also tell stories of being um, isolated socially. And that's a big, they tell stories of being that friend who has to take care of playing the role of the friend who has to take care of all the drunk friends. And then we do talk about like, well, what's the effect of that later on in life? Does that affect your relationships later on in life when you are kind of brought up to say, well, my job is to take care of you who are drunk, right? When you get married, well, what does that lead to in some way? So there's a lot of psychology.
Mommy wine culture.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Um, so we look at it from a lot of different perspectives. I can tell you that some students will tell me that even as prevalent as drinking is at Notre Dame's campus, it's even more prevalent in a different way at a large, like a state school, like Florida State or something, um, wherever you go, you're going to see it. And I pray for parents whose kids are going to college because the college ain't going to tell you. It's not going to be on a marketing campaign. You're never going to see that. I mean, the only way I'm able to teach my class is I pitch it as like, look, uh, yes, we have drinking problems at Notre Dame, but you know what? We're actually talking to our students about it and educating them. That poster right behind me is a play that we started. It's called Red Cup. And Red Cup, it consists of uh, student stories written in drunk on film about their own lives and of drinking and different perspectives. And they volunteered to use their paper. We anonymized it. And we have our theater students kind of read them as monologues. And they range in a lot of different stories. Stories from students who were sexually assaulted, stories from students who had a father who they loved but was, a really bad alcoholic growing up and how that affected their own behavior. So yeah, we're trying to we're trying.
Just had a question for you,
Sure.
Ted. Um, so my question is, and I just preface this by saying that I'm of a certain age that the Breakfast Club came out as I was graduating high school. So now in my mind, I say, whatever happened to Molly Ringwald? And then when you tell me this, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, you know. But my question is this. So I was that raging alcoholic, as Elise mentioned, when I was in high school. Um, and I remember specifically that when I got to college and turned it up 12 notches from there, I remember specifically that I really didn't have an understanding about what the sort of not so much the health effects, but what the social effects of, being an alcoholic were. Other than, like you mentioned, when you have the acceptance and that makes you feel like someone, your first time away from home, all that kind of bullshit. But the question I had for you, do you see a specific role for parents in educating their children about the realities of alcohol use and how quickly and it can lead to misuse? And that's outside of the fact of you yourself being alcoholic or not being alcoholic. I just wonder what is the role of parents to actually, before their kids go off to school, I mean, other than obviously, I guess, like demonizing alcohol use in high school because it's illegal or whatever. I know that we took the approach with our youngest son to just say, well, the thing is, you could use this to the point where you need to be serious about what you're going to do with the product. And this is where the product can take you. It can take you down some very dark, dark paths and whatever, and also attempting to raise a decent man child. I just often wonder if there is a lot of movement to get parents to be able to educate their youngsters, about what the effects of alcohol are.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, I would myself probably didn't do a very good job either. I mean, I teach the class, and my kids are not sober, right? Um, I've always thought that the alcohol industry and the alcohol culture isn't going anywhere. It's gonna probably going to get worse, right? So I think one of the things is like, why do we wait until for my particular class, why am I waiting till they're 17 to educate them about how alcohol is portrayed and marketed? I tell them it's like if you got to college in your first year of freshman college and you walked into my classroom and I gave you your first toothbrush, it's a little late, right? It's a little late to get your first toothbrush when you're 17. I mean, I think media literacy is really important especially in junior high school. I actually did a 3-day workshop at our eighth grade parochial school, talking specifically about this class, and I've toned it down a little bit for the for the parents and the Catholic parents, but um, the they're just not even aware. Parents are just completely unaware in general of the culture, and the students are not unaware of it. And they are and the media that they're watching is a little scary, specifically when you have streaming access to streamers like Netflix and Prime, and the idea that you can watch all this on your phone. Jenny, shows like The Kissing Booth, but if you look at series, one of the biggest series that my students, the eighth grade students, said that they watch is called Outer Banks. I don't know if you guys know what Outer Banks. Outer Banks was like I think there's like 3 or 4 episode season series that were the top Netflix series, and it's the first shot of the first episode is John B standing on top of a roof with a PBR, a Pabst Blue Ribbon, with one leg out, and it's just a beer fest for like the entire pre-title sequence. And this is like the show that the eighth graders are really watching. Ginny and Georgia is another one. The Summer I Turned Pretty, another one. You could go on and on, where alcohol is seen as a tool and a prop in the narrative, never questioned. No one ever questions any of about their behavior. Only if somebody has, only if they have maybe a character who has a drinking problem, right? Again, they always make a differentiation between the character who has the drinking problem and everybody else who is drinking. as if that's normal. So
Mhm.
they grew up so normal. If I was a parent of if I started over again and I was a parent of somebody in seventh or eighth grade, I'd go to the school and I'd say, look, we need to teach them how they are consuming media and understanding the message that's in media because they will not respond at all to statistics about alcohol.
Mhm.
We throw a million statistics at them, and I'll ask them. I was like, "Well, you watch that? You got a bunch of statistics. What did you remember?" They remembered the story,
Mhm.
and they specifically remember the stories of characters or protagonists who are closer to their age group, or if they see. And we show them. There's a really great segment in that risky drinking documentary about a man who's in his 50s who has severe alcohol addiction and what that actually looks like. That has a lot of effect on them. But look, this class is 37 hours in the classroom. It's not 1 hour on a Wednesday when you go to the school cafeteria in high school. That's not going to change anything. You've got to be dedicated to it, and you've got to have a class that's dedicated to it, and you have to have a series of parents and a faculty, which is another thing that really believes in it. Because there isn't a lot of faculty members on the college campuses that believe that alcohol is a real problem. And that's kind of scary too.
I know we need to wrap up soon, but I just wanted to say one more thing, Ted. I offer a workshop to therapists and healthcare professionals, and I talk about how language is our first point of intervention. And I just want to call out that like what you're doing is so innovative, and it is really a point of intervention what you're doing. And I just hope that you feel so proud and so good about the work that you're doing. It's just really incredible, and it's obvious that it's so rooted in compassion. It's so rooted in self-reflection and awareness, which is just, I mean, it's just an incredible gift that you're giving young people. I'm curious though, like, when you're faced with these statistics and you see it for yourself that like you're saying that like alcohol isn't going anywhere and the problem might get worse before it gets better. Like, I'm really curious about like what your own practices are to stay so grounded and rooted in what is really a mission and a vision, right? Like, and maybe even a ministry. Um, do you run marathons? Do you pray? Do you meditate? Like, like how do you stay so grounded yourself and committed to what you're doing?
I love what I do, and I tell people I can't not teach this class.
Yeah.
I get 178 stories at the end of the semester that do it. That half of them would make you cry because most of these students don't want to be drinking. They never question it. They don't really want to be drinking. They don't even know why. They're only right. Um, they didn't realize a lot of these things, and but then they say, "Hey, this has really changed my life in some ways," and that's all I need. I will tell you honestly, probably started this out of revenge at the alcohol industry as to what it's done to my life personally. Um, I never was a big drinker, but I have family members that I've had to deal with that's completely not wrecked my life, but I mean, I've learned a lot. And it's probably, on the other hand, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me because now I've been able to turn it into something that I think is very positive. But when I look at Anheuser-Busch and I look at some of these ads, it pisses me off. And I have that kind of anger at how they're taking advantage of the general public, but specifically how they really, manipulate the younger generation. So
Oh,
that's my passion.
so good. I know we're a little bit over here. I just want to thank let's everybody for Ted. That was so good. I'm so glad this is recorded because I definitely want to go back and watch it again. And I have to tell you, after you pointing these things out, like my initial, I'm mad. Like it does make me a little bit mad because I look back and be like, well, that's why I did all those things, is because I was desensitized and thought I had to, it was normal, etc. Now, I still would have turned out to be the fun train wreck that I was, but I I just think what you're doing is so innovative and really is going to make a difference, even if it's only to one person. Like that's huge. And the fact that we know that it's more than that. It has to be. So, thank you so much for staying up late and taking time to talk to our group about the important work that you're doing. Is there anything we can do to support you? Share what you're doing.
I think just sharing the class, maybe other universities might be interested, and just sharing the content. Yeah, I love talking about the class. I'll talk about it forever. I've talked about it for 9 hours today, actually. In other other venue, we have a high school group here that we're talking about it. So, I just think it's really important, and the beauty of it is to see people who appreciate it. And thank you for letting me be here, and hopefully spreading the word.
Ah, so good. Thank you so much. Well, as we wrap, you guys, next week, what we have going on Monday, we have a Claude Anonymous, Claude AI. It's kind of a joke, but not really. Tamara and I have become addicted to Claude. And so if you want to show up and learn some of the tips and tricks that we've been using to make our lives easier, and also maybe taking it a little too far, you're welcome to come and join us for that on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we are going to learn how to clean out our closet and how to dress to be the new person that we're trying to be. So talk about a range backstage. We really try to cover it all. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll catch you next time.